Hello everybody and welcome to a special episode of Librisimo. Normally I am the one interviewing other authors, but today is going to be a little different. My editor, Darian Bianco from Apex Publishing, is going to talk to me about my recently published novel, ChloroPhilia. Some have described it as a dystopian ecohorror novel, while others said it's new weird climate change fiction. In ChloroPhilia, we learn about the cloister, a seal from the outside habitat formed by interconnected domes, where a community tries to survive a gigantic and violent sandstorm. We will follow the path of the last boy born in the cloister, subject to different treatments and surgeries in order to adapt to life in the hostile exterior. So come and join our conversation.
My name is Darian Bianco. I am the managing editor for Apex Book Company, and I'm kind of hijacking a YouTube channel here, interviewing the person in charge. And we're going to talk about ChloroPhilia today, which I'm very, very excited to do. Yes, beautiful. And I have some questions, and I'm just going to start with a really basic one, just in case anyone who stumbles upon this video maybe hasn't heard of ChloroPhilia or doesn't really know what it's about. So if you could give us just like a plot level synopsis, what is this book about?
Thank you for being here. First of all, hi everybody. So ChloroPhilia is a story of a situation where there's gigantic global sandstorm that is ravaging Earth. So life in the surface is impossible, and people had to come up with creative ways to survive. Where we follow in ChloroPhilia is survivors that survive in an enclosed environment, sealed from the outside. And the storm is really becoming really violent and making people's life impossible, and trying to survive. And in that trial, they sometimes become really less human and more something else. And I'm not saying that in the literal sense, but in the sense of the people become monsters because they come to do horrible things in order to survive. So this is basically what the book is about. And when we dive into the cloister, we found some characters, and mainly we follow one of them, Kierman, who is being transformed into something that nobody knows what is it going to be. And basically this is his story in a way, from way before he was born until he becomes something.
Absolutely. So now that we know what it's about at kind of the plot level, I wanted to now ask, what is it about as far as like themes? What issues did you want to question? And why were these themes and issues at work in this book important to you? Why did you want to write about them?
Well, first of all, I live in the Middle East. I live in the Arabian Peninsula, so I live through many sandstorms. Maybe not as big as this one, but I've never experienced them before. So when I came here, it was the natural phenomenon, that and rain, because rain is very scarce here. But we don't have a lot of rain, but we have a lot of sandstorms. And sandstorms are not exactly what they're shown in the pictures and the movies. So I wanted to imagine a situation where this goes into the extreme. I always liked to take things into the extreme and see how people in society will react. So I wanted to put a group of people in a very extreme situation and see what would come out of it. I normally am a little pessimistic. I think that people normally will go mad, bananas, because an enclosed, especially because it's an enclosed environment. Anytime you have to put people inside all the time and take them away from the normal habitat, I think that it will make them extremely sensitive and probably into a path of something not very positive for them. And so mental health is very important. We talk about mental health in the book too. We talk about something like what the effects of this natural phenomenon on people in terms not just of mental health, but physically. How would that affect physically to, in a specific case, women? And we talk about a lot of miscarriages, unfortunate miscarriages, and this is something that we talk about also in the book. So it's not just the mental aspect, but also the physical aspect. And I also think that whenever we have an extreme situation, humankind is very creative, and they're going to try to find ways to survive somehow. And in this case, they're trying to create something that is kind of like a human being, an evolved human being, or that's what they think they're going to get. So they kind of play God a bit with this kid that we follow through the novel. And the thing is unpredictable. Things happened and other things happened, and the results that you wanted to achieve may not be there, and something else would happen. But overall, I think this is me talking. I'm a little special in that sense. Even though the end of the book is really, wow, something terrible happens, I think it ends in a positive way at the end. At the very last sentence, I think is very hopeful. But you have to read it.
Absolutely. So speaking to, this idea of the world, this natural phenomenon, that falls under this climate fiction, right? Or cli-fi, as a lot of people are calling it. So did you set out to know, did you know before you started writing this project that it was technically climate fiction? Is this a genre you're often drawn to, or did the idea come way before you specifically were aware of climate fiction?
I don't think I thought about it until later, much later because this book really started as a short story. First, it was a short story. It was like 5,000 words, and then it started growing, and became this little monster. And in the beginning, I wasn't thinking climate change or anything. I was thinking about extreme situation, extreme weather, because of where I live. And it was later when I realized this has to do a lot with climate change, because it tackles many of the issues that people are thinking about, like how to survive in conditions that are not very human-like living, and how to adapt. I think that's also part of climate change theme in general, and how to also take advantage of what we know in the science field to try to overcome any obstacles.
Absolutely. So you talked a little bit about how, natural phenomenon, the sandstorm, things that you experienced that you wanted to take to the extreme inspired you. I'm curious, are there other stories or authors who also inspired you to write this story, or just in general, your inspirations just overall when it comes to your writing?
3 words: Kim Stanley Robinson. It's one of my favorite writers of all times, and I had the privilege to meet him in London in 2013 in the I think it was Lancome, yes. And his trilogy, of the Mars trilogy, I think is one of the most, to me, one of the most inspiring, because it deals with many generations. It deals with the whole planet again terraformed, and it's something that I've never read before, and it's one of my favorites because it tells you how things happened. There is all the science behind, and it's just not just talking. It is you can tell that he worked the theory at least. So that's why he's always been very inspiring, and I look up from the distance, I look up to him. He's my main, one of my main influences, I think.
Yeah, that's incredible that you got to meet him. I'm sure that was super duper exciting. Um, so you've written pretty prolifically all across like the speculative space. And I know a writer, you learn from everything that you write. So I was wondering, what did you discover about the world or yourself or your writing process in specifically the process of writing Chlorophilia?
What I, normally people tell you novels are easier than short stories because in short stories you have to cut so much. Normally, in general, authors say that. I am not like everybody. To write novels, it takes a lot of energy from me. I love short stories because I love the challenge of saying a lot in very few words. That's me. That's what I'm very comfortable. So for me, to extend a story, even though Chlorophilia is not super long, it's like 50,000 words, but for me it was a real challenge to put me out of my comfort zone because I normally tend to cut, not add. And in this particular novel, Jason Sizemore, which was person from Apex who was working with me at the time, asked me to add few more words because we didn't have enough. And then obviously my wonderful translator Silberg, what we normally did was I sent him the story and he translates it. It's not the first time he has translated my work. He translates my work and then I review it with her and then we send it to Jason. This time there was no time. So what did I do? I said to Sue, if you support me in this, I will try to write directly into English and then you just have to, still review it, but you don't have to translate it yourself. And I was terrified, but I thought this is a great way to learn something new. And I did it. And she said, poor thing, oh, it's really very well done. I think still she had to correct a lot, but it gave me so much confidence. And I really thank her from the bottom of my heart because she was very patient and she was super helpful and she pushed me to do something new that I could learn from. And for that reason, I admire her forever. And I also have to say that Jason was extremely patient and extremely supportive. So I also have to thank him.
So kind of building on that, before we even started this recording, you talked about how in a way, everything you do is a little messy because you're doing all these things in so many different languages. And I was just wondering, you talked about working with Sue Burke, and I was just curious, what does it feel like for you when your work is translated? Do you find that it feels different once it's translated, or does it still, is it feeling mostly the same? What is that process like for you?
So I am, it's strange. That's how I can describe it as strange because when I've tried to translate myself from English to Spanish, I'm not very good at that normally because I add so much. I add too much. So I think being a translator is really, really difficult because you have to be true to the text, but also modify it in a way that your language requires to feel natural and for the text to flow. So when I read Chlorophilia in English and I recognize that those are my ideas, but those are Sue's words. I think it's magic. I really think it's like magic. So I'm very happy and I'm very honored that my book is out there because I never ever dreamed that I could, a girl from the middle of nowhere in Spain could even dream about have her book translated and available in the English-speaking market. Never in my wildest dreams. So for me, it's just that. It's magic. I think I honored every word I I try to see how the different structures, the different sentences are, so I can learn. So the next time I try to write in English, I do it better. And it's true that I write normally in Spanish, but sometimes I write directly into English. And I think translations, reviewing them, learning from them, reading them have helped me to become not only a better writer in English, but also in Spanish, because it makes me more aware of my structures, the ways I write, the mistakes I make, all those things. So for that, I think I'm incredibly, how can I say, incredibly lucky to have this.
That sounds really incredible. It's like such a cool process to watch your work change in that way and also not change in a different way. So I wanted to talk about definitely an element I think at work in ChloroPhilia about kind of body horror in a way, because Kierman's form is being altered as the story goes on. And personally, body horror is the one thing I struggle with. I'll read it, but it's something that always makes me squirm, maybe more than other things will. And I was just wondering, when you set out with, this story, was body horror something you initially thought of? Was it intentional, the horrific aspect, or was it really more about just like inhabiting the strangeness of what is happening to Kierman?
Well, I think it's very interesting what you just say, because for anybody, it would be body horror, but this is more about transformation. And I don't agree it's necessarily horrific because of that last sentence. It may be strange, it may seem inhuman because of the things the character has to go through to achieve that level. But if you think you are in a situation where humanity is dying and the only option forward is to try to overcome this terrible phenomenon that is happening, and the only way is to undergo certain procedures and transform your body, I think it's more about embracing and adapting. And that's why I was very, very careful to do the last chapter in a very kind of poetic way. So when you read ChloroPhilia and you arrive to the end, yes, by normal conventions would be body horror because there is a physical transformation, but I did it in such a way that I tried to be extremely poetic. So it's gonna give you the chills, but it's not gore. There is music involved. So I really try to go out of my way to make it not at all about the goreness, but about, as I said before, transforming, changing, becoming something other. And I know that's scary, but that's also something that makes you think and reflect. And that's one of the things we wanted with this novel.
No, I love that explanation. I mean, yeah, any human thinking about their body being altered in some way, that's normally scary. But I think you make a really excellent point that based on the situation taking place in the story, is it so scary when compared to everything else going on, especially if you look at it as a transformation, an adaptation, as opposed to anything being forced upon you. So that's a really great perspective. All right, so I have two fun questions to kind of round things out, and then we can finish up. So the first question is just kind of, where did you write ChloroPhilia? This is kind of a writer space question. Do you have like a workspace that you're dedicated to? Do you tend to change things up and move around? Like, where was this story created as far as physical space?
This story was created in a house that was in the desert in Dubai. I live in the United Arab Emirates in Dubai. Now I live in a small little island, but before I used to live really at the desert. And when we had sandstorms, everything was really, really, how can I describe it? It's like living in London. There's there's a fog everywhere, but it's not fog. It's sand in the air. So it's very strange, and you have this taste and you're in the back of your throat, and everything's muddy outside, and it's very, very dangerous to drive, and you see funny patterns of in the sand on the roads. There are kind of like serpents or vipers looking. It's the whole thing. It's very interesting, and what is also interesting is the how people the local people in the peninsula and all the countries in the United Arab Emirates, in the Sultanate of Oman, in Saudi Arabia, in Qatar, Bahrain, etc., Egypt, etc., how people have lived through those situations and how they did adapt, and how now with modern times, the relationship with the environment has completely changed and became very artificial. That's something also that I think inspired me to see like how now people don't live in tents anymore. They live in, houses with AC, and something that is completely, it disconnects them completely from their environment. They used to live very close to their environment, living, they told me, contrary to what you think, in this part of the world, in the summer, people live in the desert because they live mostly during the night when the temperatures were way down. They sleep a lot during the day, and in the winter they were close to the coast, living out of the fishing and pearl collecting and trading with India, etc. So that has been changed forever, and I'm not sure. Nobody knows for sure how is that going to affect, the Emirati population or the Gulf population. And so that's very interesting, and also makes you think about us and our relationship with the environment. Me, because I live here in the Arabian Peninsula, but people live in the Mediterranean or next to the Atlantic Ocean or the Pacific Ocean or in islands or in mountains, and we are all, I think, concerned about what's happening in terms of, the weather, the climate. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, last question. I was curious, can you give us any hints on anything you're currently working on, any projects upcoming, or anything we can expect from you in the future?
So in English, I am translating my novel Bionautas. Bionauts, I would translate it maybe, because we're debating should we translate the title or not. So what I'm doing is I'm translating it myself, and then I have somebody. Not in this case, it's not Suburg. It's my other translator who's helping me to review, and I'm learning so much. It's going very, very slowly, but I hope I can have it done this year. And it's a science fiction. It's a completely different story, science fiction. And I also working on 2 novels in Spanish. One has to do with 2-dimensional beings, so it's really very difficult to write. And another one, it's about it's more like folk horror, I think, and feminist, about a course in a village where women start having children since the moment they became they have their periods. They get pregnant non-stop without the intervention of anybody. It's just like an automatic thing, and that's a curse, because imagine you spend all your life having children, child after child after child. This has a lot of effect on the female population. So I'm writing about that too, and I hope to finish it also soon.
That all sounds really, really fascinating. I can't wait to see them all out in the world. That's what I had for you today. So here, let me show off my copy too. So just in case, if you hadn't seen it already, definitely go get a copy of ChloroPhilia. So thank you for taking the talk to me.
I just wanted to thank you and Jason and Rebecca and everybody in Apex for all their support, and also Surburg, my translator, and Jaina. I'm gonna try to say it in. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to pronounce it. Heiderstorff, which is the wonderful illustrator. She did a wonderful job with the cover. So I just wanted to say that before we say goodbye.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you for taking the time to talk with me today, inviting me to talk with you here. It was really, really great.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.